real quick. There we go. So as you can see, I kind of have some templates already kind of in the works. And just know that when you create a template, it's going to be under the My Templates, not the Shared With Me. So when you go into your envelopes, when you're in a room to send a document, it will not be the same tab. You'll still have two separate tabs, and instead of going through what you find on the Shared With Me, you would do My Templates, because they are going to be different, and you want to just make sure that you're not using what we have created for the office if you have designed your own template with it set up the way you want it. So I'm going to go ahead and click New, because I'm going to create a new template, and I'm going to say Create Template. Now I am going to do a blank addendum. And this is going to just say blank addendum, because you can do packets. So if you wanted to do, say, a listing packet, because there's certain verbiage that you always put in a listing contract, you can create an entire packet where all of the documents that you use for that listing, whether it be your listing agreement, lead-based paint, pamphlet, I mean, you name it, any of the documents, the disclosures, any of those documents, you can add them all into one, have them all set and templated, and then when you go into your envelope, you would just select your listing pamphlet, your packet, and it would put all of those documents already templated into your envelope. And instead of having to individually add each one of those documents into your Documents tab, and then individually adding them into the envelope. So that is a way to do it. Now, the reason that we're going to have this template class is because the templates are usable only in your envelopes. So you would never be able to take that listing packet and put it into your Documents tab. You would only be able to use it in your envelopes. So you would only have PDFs in your documents once they are signed. So that is the difference. But blank addendum is one that people use quite frequently. Now, we've submitted it to Docusign for like the third time, trying to get it put in as a form. And as of right now, it's not. So that's why I'm using it as an example. It's one that everybody uses at some point or another. And it's a pretty straightforward document. There's like only 5 spots to put something, so it will be relatively easy for us to work through it. And the other reason is they have fixed it. You can now add multiples of the same document in an envelope, meaning you can add multiple blank addendums, but I still want to be able to show you how to duplicate a template, because it does duplicate with all of the formatting. So if you have a listing packet, for example, that is for a home older than, I think it's what, 1978. So if it's older than that, it would need the lead-based paint disclosure. But if it's a new construction, you may just want to send them the pamphlet so they have it and they can say that they saw it, and you don't need to have them do a disclosure. So you may want 2 packets, one with it and one without, already templated and ready to go. You can create one, duplicate it, and edit the new copy and not have to re-template the entire packet. So I want to show you how to do that with the blank addendum, because it's one that people may use multiples of. So when you're here, the other reason for the description here is that if you are doing, say, a listing packet, you can list out all of the things that are included in that packet. So that way when you look at it, you know, does this one have the, yep, it does, here it is. So you can list that out in the description if you desire. So you're going to see that you have to add the document, and I'm going to click Upload. And there are 2 ways that you can do this, depending on how you have your system set up. I myself, on my desktop, not on this laptop, have it set up so that way my drive actually comes as a clickable option here where I can upload from my drive. And then I also have downloaded the PDF before we started this class, so I would have it. I recommend that you have a folder on your desktop, which I do on my desktop, I have a folder that says documents. It just says documents on it, because what I do is I make sure that I have a PDF copy of every document that I may need in one spot, so that way if something like this were to happen, or if I wanted to work on templates or whatever, I would have that PDF already available to me. So here's the blank addendum. I can view it from this platform to see that it is the correct document, and it is. So I'm going to go down here, and it says add recipients to envelope. So this is what's really important. You're not actually adding the person, because this is a template. So you're just adding the role. So we're going to type in, I'm going to type in agent, and we can leave it as needs to sign, because, you know, it doesn't change anything. And then we're going to add roles. So we're going to put buyer 1, add, buyer 2, add, seller 1, add, seller 2. Now, because this has been something that is somewhat recent, I'm going to add seller 3, and I'm going to add buyer 3. Now, you won't need these every single time, but we're going to put them in place. That way they are available as an option for you if you do have a third seller. Ms. Jalen, would you have somebody, an additional agent on that? And if you were sent a blank addendum, you as the agent don't have to sign it, right? Yeah, okay, so we're just going to leave it as agent then. So these are all of my people. I have buyer 3, buyer 1, 2, and 3, and seller 1, 2, and 3, as well as the agent on there. So those are my people for this document. And then it has an email signature. Please Docusign blank addendum to purchase or listing. I'm just going to put blank addendum. And then you can also do an email message if you so desire. You don't have to. I myself, I'm just going to leave it blank because this isn't an actual packet of any information, so there's no real message for me to include. And then you're going to hit next. So it is going to bring you to this blank page, and you're going to have to add all of the boxes, the text boxes. So this is going to be a text box. Now you could do 2 of these, because in this one, I'm going to say listing. And I feel like, for me, that looks pretty small. So I'm just going to come over here to formatting, and I'm just going to make this a little bit bigger, because I just think it looks weird if it's not big. And then I'm going to come over here to text. And you have to add the text boxes for these. So there's a comma there, and I'm going to hit Control-C, Control-V. That's going to copy and paste the text box for the next one. It is a shortcut that you're going to need. What happened?
I have a question.
Yes.
I was just thinking, I'm in my account to do this. Should I be in Marcy's account? And should one who sends these out, or will she have access to the ones I create?
So the question is, as an admin on a team, or when you're working with someone, if there is someone you're going to be sharing a document with, should the template be on their account or on your own? Now, my understanding is, and it's how we have done things, is that you can't share with the whole market center, but you can share with an individual. So I would say for something like a blank addendum, to just test it, create the blank addendum on yours and share it with Marcy, and make sure that Marcy can see it and look at it. That's what I would do.
And then she would still access it through her envelope.
She would access it through her envelope still. Click on the template, but she would have to click share with me, because you're the owner of it and you're sharing that template with her. And just know that when you share something, like if I share my cake with you and you take a bite of my cake, I can't get that bite of cake back, right? So if she changes something on her side of the template, it will change it on your side.
She takes this envelope off her piece.
If she flicks sprinkles off her piece of cake, your cake no longer has sprinkles. So that is just an analogy because it was Father's Day and I made cake. I did. Did you? It was a red, white, and blue one. There were sprinkles. It was amazing. So you will have to put a box in each of these little lines here, and you can just kind of arrange them to fit as needed. And you may not even need all of these because it says the addendum is between sellers and buyers on property located at. And realistically, you may not always have two buyers or sellers, right? You may only have, you know, one person who's selling or one person who's buying. Or you may need to, when typing this in, add a comma because there is a third person. So you can do that when creating the names for this. Now this is the part that I want to be real specific about though. When you are putting in the text box down here, do not, I repeat, do not go line by line. You will hate your life. Because if you do it this way and then you create your next line and you do it this way, each one of these lines will be required for you to fill out. And if you go to read only and you're like, well, I'll just make them read only and fill in line by line, when that line ends, you have to click to the next line. So a good example is there was a contract that I was helping an agent with who needed very specific legal verbiage added in. And it was lengthy. It was quite a sizable paragraph. And because the document that was being used had these individual lines, we could not copy and paste that verbiage because we didn't know where the line was going to cut off the verbiage. Exactly. So it was very difficult to work with, and we ended up having to print the document without the verbiage, scan it in as a PDF, re-upload it, and add a text box over where the verbiage was supposed to go and add it in. No, because when we printed it out, I sat there and I had to wipe the lines out so that way it would fit. So it can be a little work intensive if you do it this way, and you don't want to do that to yourself if you're the one in control of the template. So do yourself a favor, and when you're creating this one, just take this and make it a giant chunk. Because when you start to type in here, it will start at the top, but you can hit enter and keep going. Like you can list it out here if you want. And because you have control over the option of formatting, if for whatever reason you do want to list things out and it's quite a lengthy list, you can also go over here and it will, oops, on this side here, you'll have formatting options and you can make it a fixed width. You can make it smaller. You can change what the font is, which doesn't seem like that would be important, but again, when I was working with this legal description that was quite lengthy, in order to make it fit in the provided area, we had to change the size, we had to change the format, the text style to narrow, so it would all fit in the spot and be legible. So there are times, maybe not on this particular document, where knowing that you can format is going to be important. Another example is, say, for whatever reason, there's this list, but then it's decided that you don't want that particular item. You can change it. Let's see. I didn't highlight it for a second. Maybe I did. But you can change the color and do like a line through. So there are other features that you can do. I think because I'm doing a, is it? Just trying to remember where my line through is. Oh, it's because I'm not looking on the wrong side. So you can go up, there it is, markup tools, and do a line through something. So that way you don't have to redo the entire document if something is decided that you're not going to be doing it. So there is the line through option as well. So also know that whatever you put for verbiage in your template is going to be there every time you load that template. So if I, in this template section, were to put a client's name or an address or this verbiage here, every time I use the template, that is going to be on it. So you would have to know to change that out.
Okay, so for example, on a purchase contract at the bottom, it requires the agent, all their office info and all that jazz. You could put that on.
You can, in fact, as you're saying, at the bottom of, say, a listing contract, there's a place where, or purchase contract, sorry, where you have to put the office information and the license number and all of those details for the agent. You can autofill these out in the template with that information, and every time you use it in the template section, it will already be filled out, and you won't have to do it every time. So it is a time saver if you create your own templates.
Is that particular example something that you could change in like your profile settings so that would be autofilled in the form anyways?
So the question is there a setting feature where you could auto have that populate without having to do the template? There is a settings feature. Oh, sorry, I forgot to forward my phones. I'll be right back. Sorry. So there is supposed to be an option for you to, in your settings, create a default, so to say, of all of your information that it's supposed to auto-populate over. I have to look into it a little bit more because it was doing it, but then it stopped doing it, and Docusign was going through a lot of updates last week, so I wasn't able to really play with that feature too much. So that's one of the things I'm going to be working on this week, is to see if there is a way for me to have that information set up, because there were agents who were using it and who have it defaulting their info in, and then other agents who we couldn't get it to work. So I'm not sure if it's fully functional, but it should be an option. So I am going to be messing with that a little bit, and that will also default some information in for you. I just don't know all of what information it provides. I just know that it's supposed to be the license number, and it's supposed to be your office's address, brokerage information, phone number, all those things that are included as part of the contract. So, okay, so then we get down to the bottom part of the page here, and this is when it gets really, really important. So you as the agent are filling all of these things out, and you are this yellow person here at the top that says agent, and if you click on that, you can see I have buyer 1, buyer 2, buyer 3, seller 1, 2, and 3 here as well. Over here, should I require to just change a single box, I can also change that person here. This changes the boxes that you have highlighted. This assigns the boxes that you are putting on the page. So what that means is if I needed to just change this box to be buyer 1, I could click on it like that and it will highlight it, right? So I do want that to be agent though, so I'm gonna switch it back before I forget. And then when I come down here though, I want to be adding signature and date boxes. These are all yellow because I'm an agent. I want to work on the buyer 1. So I'm going to click buyer 1, and now all of these texts have changed. So anything that I add from this point on is going to be buyer 1. Is this initials or signatures? Signatures, right? Okay. So I'm going to do buyer 1, and I'm going to sign here. And then I'm going to do date signed, and I'm going to put it basically touching it. Now, the reason that I'm putting them so close together is because for whatever reason, this date signed box here, the date signed bar is very, very long. It's day, time, and the time goes down to like milliseconds, and then it has AM and PM, and it's just very, very lengthy. So if you have it over where it actually says date right here, it will be completely off the page and it won't even show it. Now, you do get a certified document receipt, so the date will be on that, but you need to have the date on the contracts and as well, date and time. So you want to just make sure that you're giving it enough room for it to actually fit on there. So that's buyer 1. Now I'm going to go to buyer 2. So I switched to buyer 2 up here, and now my signature box is set for buyer 2. So I'm going to put my buyer 2, and I'm going to do my date signed. And then, like I said, I was going to add a third buyer. This document doesn't have a third buyer spot. However, I need to make sure that if I have a third buyer, there is the option of me having them sign it. So I'm just going to add it down here. So that way, if I do end up having a third buyer, there's still a spot for them to sign. Now I'm going to go to seller 1. And I'm going to duplicate this process for my sellers. And I'm going to switch to seller 2. And I'm going to do signature and date signed. And if you feel like you move faster doing it this way, you can highlight these 2 boxes, hit Control-C, Control-V, and it will duplicate the pair. And then you can add that there. Now, your initial thought is, well, it's the same color as that one, so that means it's seller 1, right? Correct. It actually will tell you over here who the recipient is when you have it highlighted. But if you remember, we can change that and click seller 3, and now that will be the third seller. So that is how you get that particular part done. Now, once you have, I'm going to remove this verbiage so that way it's blank.
I noticed you have all the boxes marked as required. Is that necessary in the templates? Or is that like when you go to fill it out, all of those boxes will be required?
So her question is that I have them all marked as required. Is that something that has to be done when you're in templates, or can you change that? Here's the thing, you can change it if you want to, but these are all going to be fillable fields. So you want them required because you can actually change these parts to read only instead of required. But here's the thing, is you need to know if it's the listing or if it's the purchase contract that you're putting the addendum onto. So that part has to be filled out. You may be working with the seller, you may be working with the buyers, but you're going to have to put their names in there, right? Who you're buying and selling, who the party of the contracts are. And then you do have to list the address because it's in reference to a property, so you have to specify which one. So these are all required fields on every addendum that you fill out, whether or not it is for the listing or if it's for the purchase. And then if you're doing an addendum, you obviously have, see, I actually changed this to dark green and I just realized it. You actually have some type of description or necessity that you're bringing in for this addendum. So that's also required. So the required fields for this particular document, yes, they have to be required. There may be fields that on, say, a purchase contract are only sometimes required. Like there may be a time that this additional text box is needed, but it's not always needed. You can, instead of having it be required, put read only. And then when you use that template, you can change that it's a required field, and that will make it fillable for you. So you don't have to leave it as required for the template, but for this particular one, there are only so many boxes, so they're all required boxes. And for other ones that you can do both, and then you have the option of switching them when you're using that template. So let's go back up here and scan through. So I have all my buyers and my sellers. I have all my text boxes. So I'm going to go ahead and hit save and close. And it is going to save it right here. And so now I'm going to come over to my name, and I'm just going to switch to preferences so you can see what the document looks like in the envelope. Sure. So I don't think I don't have any documents in here, so this will be a great example. So we're going to go to envelopes. I'm going to hit draft here, and I'm just going to leave it as please Docusign. Just know that you should never leave your envelope names as please Docusign. Make sure you're changing that to include some form of indicator of what it is that you've sent them. Because when you go back into your Docusign and you're looking for something, you would have to click on every single envelope in there to figure out which one has what you're looking for, because there's no other indicator from the envelope. Sometimes Jalen says, even when you do name it, you have to click on every single one to look for the stuff because you haven't named it well. So you just want to make sure that you're naming your envelope so you know what's in it, because what's going to happen is if you don't do that, you're going to have 15 envelopes that all say please Docusign, and you're not going to know which any one of them has your information in it. So I'm going to label this one blank addendum, and I'm just going to put 622. That way I know that it's a blank addendum I'm sending today. And it says room docs here. If you click on it, I don't have any room docs in, so I'm not going to be adding any that way. However, we just made a template, so I'm going to click on the use template. It will automatically open up this browser to the templates that you yourself have created. So if you haven't created any, it will be blank. I have created a couple, so I have some examples in there. And I'm going to click on the one that we just made today, which is this blank addendum here. If you were to click on the shared with me, you would see eventually, there we go. You would see that these are the ones that have been created for you via the Market Center. Now the downside is that sometimes, like I was saying, when you share something with somebody else, they can make changes to that template and it affects your template. And so that is why I'm doing this example of the blank addendum, is because whomever used our blank addendum last erased all of our text boxes. So that's why everybody has been having to add their own text boxes, is because we don't know who's using our templates. Like, we know it's our office, but we don't know who the person is. And they made changes that erase the text boxes. Previously, somebody used the template, but they were in the template section, so they put all of their buyer and seller information in there. So everybody who was using the template after it had their buyer and seller information. So you just have to be careful when you're doing templates, because it is a template, meaning it's editable. So I'm going to go back to my templates here. You can see it says selected up here. So if I want one of my templates and to share with me, I can select multiple in different tabs, and it will show me all of what I have selected here, and I can still add them all. So you don't have to go back in if I want my blank addendum, but I do need that coronavirus addendum as well, and that's an office template. So I can add both at the same time. I don't have to go back and forth. Add selected. And it's going to take just a second, but if I click view, yeah, it's still loading a little bit. So this is the document that I put in, right? And you're like, wait a minute, where are the boxes? So when we go down here, you're going to see the add recipient to folder, right? So I'm going to do myself. So we're going to do pre-tagged roles. These are the roles that we created in that template. We have our agent, we have buyer 1, buyer 2, buyer 3, seller 1, seller 2, seller 3. If we had only done 2 buyers and 2 sellers, there would only be 2 buyers and 2 sellers here. If we had added another agent, there would be a secondary agent here. So what comes up in these pre-tagged roles are the ones that you decided on when you created that template, okay? So I'm gonna say that there's a buyer, and I'm just, again, gonna pick myself because then I can show you what it looks like. What's up?
So I think Nancy and I were doing something like this last week. He was working on lease agreement documentation. And he was doing it in forms because I didn't have templates filled out for that. And it had like duplicate, well, each form, so like on one form it was called the owner or something like that, and the other one was called the agent or whatever, but they're the same people. You have to select that for each document. Because he was making the envelope and he had multiple forms in there that were all for the one lease, but on each lease document.
So what she was saying is that there were multiple documents that were being used in an envelope, but the different documents had different verbiage for the titles of the same person. So one might say owner, but the other document might have said agent. And it was for the same person, but they had technically different roles. Is that what you mean?
Yes.
So you would have to select the person, and then you can add them in multiple roles. So if the agent and the owner are the same person, even on different documents, you can still add them. You would just select the same person for the agent and the same person for the buyer. Because
like, say you selected the agent who was also the owner, but you forgot to select the owner, you would then just have to drag the signatures in if you didn't want to come back.
yes, so once we get there, we'll add an extra signature box just so you can see it, but I'm gonna add myself as the agent and the buyer in this, and I'm gonna add selected. So, and I actually don't need to be up there. I guess I just added myself accidentally. So I need to be first as the agent. I want to view it. It's an addendum. There's no place for me to sign. I just need to view it and make sure it looks proper before my buyer signs it, because if I view it and there's something wrong, I can still void the envelope before my buyer signs it. I mean, that makes pretty much some pretty basic sense, right? Because you don't want to think that you have the document ready to go only to be like, oh no, I definitely spelled refrigerator wrong and I don't want to look dumb. So you can void it. You can void it and then redo the envelope so that way they get the correct. A big one on that is for money. When you're looking at buyer and seller net sheets, we were looking at doing the formulas within Docusign to make them self-calculate. And one of the things that we learned is that you can do formulas and functions, but where you put that, you can't see it until it's sent. So you can't see what the bottom dollar amount will be to make sure that it's been done correctly until you've sent it and it's view it. So there are some times when it's really it's good practice to make sure, even if you don't need to sign something, that you're viewing it before you send it out to people, because that's when you can catch mistakes. So here's my agent, here's my buyer. I'm both. You do not want to send them a basic email subject that says, please DocuSign. You want to just specify, if you can. You can say, please DocuSign, but it's going to say blank addendum. That way, maybe they know what they're signing. And if it's something that's a listing packet and it has multiple documents, just as a courtesy to your client in the email message, kind of give them an idea of what they're signing, what it maybe means. I mean, you're obviously going to have these conversations with them in person or over the phone, so they'll already know what they're signing, but it's just a reiterance, because with DocuSign, fun fact, when you hit yes, I want to sign, it drops you to where the signature is. And so they may scroll to the top of just that page and read it and be like, oh yeah, sure, but it's really a 4-page long document and they didn't know that. So you just may want to clarify some of that information with your people, because Docusign, as a user of Docusign on the signing side of things, it does drop you down to wherever your signature are. And some of these contracts are quite lengthy, so they may not know, as not being familiar with them, that it's a 7-page document and they went from the header of page 1 to the bottom of page 7. So it can be quite confusing sometimes. So you just want to clarify in your email message what they're doing.
I have also gotten into the habit of, so like an email subject, I'll do the property address dash, and then if it is a blank addendum, I will try to put in the subject line what the addendum is about. So for example, if it's like fire to keep washer and dryer or something like that, I'll put like accessories addendum or seller paid closing cost addendum or something like that, where they have an information specifically that, but so that way they can scroll through your emails and see which one, because you may have more than one blank addendum.
Right. So what Jalen was saying is that she has gotten into the practice of, in the email subject, putting the address of the property, and then if it's, say, a blank addendum saying, you know, 123 Main Street, addendum to keep fridge. That way, when they're scrolling through their emails and they're looking for what they have to sign, it's an indication to them of what they're doing, of what you've sent them. So that way they know what to look forward to for signing. So then you're going to hit next once you have that part filled out. Uh-oh. Where did my thing go? This is not correct. This is just what the buyer needs. Wait, I'm going to go back. I think I selected somebody wrong. Blank addendum, buyer. Oh. Okay, so I changed it, my role, to needs to view. And when I switched it to needs to view, because I, when setting up the template, had the agent needing to require to fill out, because I said I only needed to view it, it took it as an indication that it was already filled out. So you do actually have to put needs to sign, even if you don't have a sign bar. So, fun fact, don't put needs to view. Needs to sign. Learn something new. So it says that my name for both fields, but because I already know that me as the agent is always yellow, I know that this is for me. It will say your buyer's name and they will be blue because that's who the buyer one is. And you can see it kind of skewed this a little bit, so you can just adjust it even though it's already here. So that way they're on the same line, but you don't have to do that. And then here, you know, you can put in Wilma Rock Red. I couldn't think of his last name. Rock. Betty Pearl. And then what was Fred's buddy's name? The blonde. Betty and I can't remember. Rubble. I remember it was Barney. Barney Pearl. And it's going to be Bedrock City Condo.
I'm sure she's paying attention.
This one, hard to keep her in line. She's trouble. 100% trouble. Barney, do you do like a paragraph or do you just list what it is that they want to keep?
Seller
To
sometimes line, and then I'll do like 3 dashes, nothing follows, 3 dashes, just so that they know that it's there.
Okay. So you mean like this? Oopsie, hit my number lock. So Jaylyn is in person in the class, if you guys haven't caught on to that, because I keep mentioning her. Jaylyn is not imaginary or living in my brain. So she includes this dash dash, nothing to follow dash dash. So that way, no matter who is filling out or receiving this form, they know that this is the end of it. There's not more that got cut off or anything like that. So that way, it's just a clear cut, this is the end of the request or the addendum. So that's actually a good tip to follow. So probably a good practice for you guys to do that. Now, if for whatever reason you have set up your template and you've only done it for buyer 1 and buyer 2, and you do have a third person, you can also have added them as a recipient to this folder, and then you can add their signature and date line as well. Another thing to note is in addition to having lengthy, strange paragraphs, sometimes you do like a line through something. Or you may have just an additional, sentence of verbiage that you want to add to the contract, but it's not really like a fillable field. So you add a text box somewhere and you type in paint it red. So you add in that text. Now, wherever you add in that text, your buyer or your seller, whomever you're working with, is going to need to initial it. So you can add an initial box and say, okay, this is a PDF document, but now I want to add in this paint it red, and your client will now have to initial it. So you'll just make sure that once you've put in that text box, oops, you can take that and say, okay, now my heavens, I clicked on the wrong one, sorry. You can change that, so now you filled out the painted red, and now your client can initial next to that change, because they do have to acknowledge any changes that you make, especially if it's already been agreed upon by one of the parties. So you can do things of that nature. So once you get to this point, this document is pretty well editable. You can fill out these fields, you can add signatures, initials, dates, anything of that nature. You can fix your formatting, and then you're going to go ahead and hit send. Now, because I'm the agent and I chose myself as the first person, it's telling me automatically that it needs my signature. It will pop up blue, it will give you a little thing, do you want to sign now? And I am going to sign. So I'm going to go ahead and hit continue. It's going to show me what's here, what's required, and there's nothing for me to sign, so I'm going to hit finish. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I was gonna say, if because you didn't mark it as read only, if you could go in and make changes to your site portion. So, like if you resend that to yourself.
Let's see. So please review the documents below. So this is the PDF that your buyer would get. See, yours had text boxes that were still highlighted as required. You should be able to still edit at that time.
Okay, that's what
If it's a required box that's highlighted red and it has like that clickable field, then you should still be able to. Once that is been finished and it goes to the next person, they'll receive a flat PDF with the only thing indicating their signature. So you can go ahead and hit start, and it's going to say required to sign here. There's my signature. Now you see my date and time, how it's kind of long. That actually shortened it. Now it doesn't say milliseconds. So that's kind of nice. My signature was a little low when I set my box, so it kind of has a bit of a line through it, but it still works, it's fine. And then I'm going to hit finish.
So for example, like if you spelled refrigerator wrong or whatever, you could have gone
You should be able to. You should be able to. Let's just create a new one real quick and we'll just test that real quick. Use a template, blank addendum. Oopsie, there we go. And I'm going to do pre-tagged roles. And I'm just going to use my cell, make sure I have the right email address, yes. Add selected. Next. Oop. Send.
Yeah, because you have it marked as required and you did not mark read only. Because if you mark read only, then I think you would be able to.
So now these are fillable. Here, go. Dildo. Yep. Oh boy. Left. So those are all fillable. And when I click finish,
Then, yeah.
I don't have a next signer, so it won't prompt me for the next signer. However, these are now both completed. So if I go to documents and I can see these documents now because I've been given my certifieds. So this one is the one that we started with as an example. And you can see I've got listing, Wilma, Fred, Betty, Barney, everything looks good. There's my signature, yippee. Go ahead and close that. Now this one takes a second to load and all of the edits that I put in are there. So yes, you can, if it's required and you're the agent and you don't mark read only, you can edit in that phase as well.
So the reason that I bring that up is, for example, if you were sending a listing commission, I don't know why we would have this happen, but if, like, for example, our listing agreement, and it was accidentally assigned to the buyer to fill in that text portion, if you don't mark read only, they could change it from 3%.
They can. So when you're using one of these templates or you're using a regular document, you should always be very, very careful about what privileges you're giving to the people that you're sending this to. So I'm not going to send another envelope here, but I'm just going to show you that when, well, I'm going to have to add a template real quick, but when you add a recipient and you do pre-tagged roles, you want to make sure that you're selecting the people that are appropriate for that task. You do not want to select the agent and give that role to your buyer, because then the things that are assigned for the agent to do in that template will default to the buyer. A perfect example of this is actually your disclosures. You as an agent are not allowed to touch, for the lack of a better word, you're not allowed to touch that document. They are the ones who have to check the boxes. They're the ones who have to fill it out to the best of their knowledge, and they're the ones who have to sign it. I think the exception to that rule may only be just writing out the legal description on that top part of the bar, which if you're using Docusign defaults in, so you don't even do that. It's just so that way you know which property it belongs to. But other than that, everything on that form should be selected, checked, signed, dated, everything by the client. So if you select agent, they're going to get a flat PDF because the agent has no roles on that other than the address. And so your buyer would not be, or your seller rather, would not be able to check any of the boxes. And we did have an issue with that because the agent was selected for the role to select whether or not they lived at the residence or not when Docusign created the form. So all of them were being returned without that box being checked because they didn't have permission to do it, because the agent had been selected for that box. So we had to ask Docusign to correct it, and they did, thankfully, pretty quickly, actually, within a few hours. So it depends how the template or the document form has been set up. So you want to be very careful about who roles you're giving to which. Now, say you have a room participant that you're adding that is not a pre-tagged role. I want Jaylyn to have access to something because she is my TC, or is, you know, the daughter who's helping the parents sell the house and they ask that she be sent copies of everything. So whatever it is, you can, now of course, Daisy is part of this room, so I'm gonna select her. I can add somebody that's already part of it and then change the role and it not be part of the pre-tagged role. So you would have to assign it. She could just receive a receipt. Just know that I sent this to your parents. Or receives a copy. Say I'm working with Jaylyn because she's doing TC for just this job for me. She's not, I haven't hired her or anything like that, but she's just helping me with this one contract. I may want to make sure that she receives a copy of everything that I'm sending because she needs to know when something has been done or completed so that way she can do her part without us having to constantly play phone tag.
Will this also be a part where you add the third buyer? Because in the details, there's not an option to add a third buyer.
You can also add the third buyer in here as well, yes. Now, the only thing I have not had luck with, and I'm really hoping that it's something that they're working on, is that you were supposed to be able to add people to your contact book, your address book, and then they would be searchable here. Oopsie, so sorry, I hit a button. And I have added somebody in as a test, and I still cannot find her. And so I don't know why they took that feature away. That was a big part of what we were looking for. So when it comes to room participants, if you can't find the person and or it's not allowing you to pull that person up, then when you go to add recipients, I would say email address and then type in the person's name and then their email address and then select what you need from them. And then you can move on. I don't know why that is. When you add the room participant, it's supposed to be the ability for you to add people into your room like an admin or somebody who necessarily doesn't have any particular interest in the documents that you're sending, but needs them to complete other tasks, you know? So I might have Jaylyn in my contact book and I'm supposed to be able to put her in as a room participant to receive a copy, but that function really isn't working as of right yet. So adding the email address is the best alternative. You have to just type in their name, their email address, unfortunately every time because they're not considered a participant of the room. And then you can select what their role will be once they're there. So that's really all that you have to know about when you're sending these templates. Is you first of all want to select pre-tag roles because that is what will be pulled into your envelope into those signable fields and fillable fields. And you want to make sure that who you're selecting is correct for the role that you're selecting. But also just know that the room participants is only the people who are, I'm actually just going to save and close here, are here in this people function. So you're going to see default admin and you're going to see Tiffany Bono. When you pull me up in the pre-tagged roles, I have 2 emails, so it pulls me up twice in that row that as T Bono at KW, but also my front desk one. I'm the same person, so it just shows me here as one person. KW admin will always show up in your people because technically KW owns the Docusign that you're working under. So when you open new rooms and do things, you're going to see an email that comes from Sherry that says, Sherry opened a new room. No, she didn't. Sherry doesn't know what you're doing in your Docusign rooms. It's just an automated feature because she is the KW Market Center administrator. So she's like the owner of the Docusign that you're working under. So that will always be the case. Do not add your client as the people in the room. Their details come from here, and that's what comes over. If you add them here, they have access to your documents. That is very important. You do not want your clients, even though they are trustworthy, wonderful people, to have access to your documents, because if they have access to their documents, even if they don't mean it, they can change things in your documents, or the other agent can change things in your documents, and you don't want to get to closing day to find out that half of the information in your document was erased and signed and you had no clue because it wasn't you who did it. So do not add them here. They will come through your details, which I believe she was a buyer, so it's probably down here. Yeah, so this one was for a buyer, so all of the details for this person came in down here. If it was a seller, they would be up here, but their information comes from this detail section. See, it says created by Sherry Maxwell. Sherry Maxwell did not create this, I did. It will stay the same on yours. She did not create your room, you did. What's up?
We're talking about the packets.
Mm-hmm.
So like documents in there, you just select more than one when you're creating your template.
Yep, so when you come, I'm going to switch back to e-signature. She was asking when we were doing the templates for packets. When you click on templates here, I think I have one that was already started. Buyer, I think, is it? No. Yes. So I have a cost estimate, which is 2 pages. Oh, I just got to move my people, sorry. And then I have a buyer brokerage agreement in here, which is 3 pages. So when you add a new template and you're creating one, it will ask you to upload a document. I can upload one, and then it will automatically bring in the next one. Just like when you're doing an envelope in your Docusign room, you can add as many as you want. And that's why I said you can make an entire packet of it. Now, I have made this blank addendum with you guys today, right? I'm actually, delete that. I don't need. So, next to my blank addendum here, you can see I have all my roles. You can look at your details, but there's this use and this little thing. Do not click use. Use is what allows you to make the changes. And if you use it from here, whatever you put in that blank addendum is permanent. And that is where the confusion happens. You have to add it in your envelope. The template is editable for you to go through and put all your stuff. It will not permanently change the template. But if you click use here, any changes that you make to your blank addendum are going to stay there. So when you go to use it the next time, the buyer's information from your previous deal or use are going to be there. So don't hit use, only access it from your envelope. But next to this is that little caret, and you can create a copy. There it goes. I'm just going to keep clicking it until it happens. So, there it goes. Okay, so now you're going to see that it says blank addendum with a little 2 here, right? So I just don't like the little brackets, so I take them out. So this is going to be the exact same thing. It's going to already have the form in there because I made a copy of what was already existing. It's already got all of my roles there because I've already set this template up, right? And I'm going to go ahead and hit next. It already has all the text boxes in place. It already has all of the signatures and the date signed, except this isn't going to be a listing. This is going to be purchase. Save and close. So what I accidentally did is I hit that button like 5 times because I was super impatient, and so I made like 5 of them. So don't do that. I'm just gonna have to delete these real quick. So Okay, so you have the blank addendum for the purchase, for the listing. Then I made a second blank addendum for my listing, and then I made a blank addendum for my purchase. What was my big mistake? Anybody? Which one is my listing blank addendum? I don't know which one is for the listing, which now I do right now because I just made them. So I'm like, well, the one I just made, which is this one, is the purchase, right? Except how would I know that a month from now when I go to use it in my templates in my envelope? It definitely will not. So the nice thing is that you can take this and you can also edit. And when you do, you can put purchase, addendum, purchase, and then hit next. So you can rename these and then just hit save and close. You don't have to do any changes in the document. And now my blank addendum purchase. Now you saw it. I used a simple document just for this class purpose. So it was pretty straightforward and quick to get that document templated. I did not have to add any boxes to my duplicates. So if you create a listing packet with 5 documents in it, and one of them is the listing or the lead-based paint disclosure, you can duplicate that. All of the text boxes and fields will already be there, and all you have to do is edit which document you're removing. So if you don't need the lead-based paint disclosure at that point, you can just remove it, and all of the rest of the fields will already be there for you.
Can you do that when you put it in the envelope, like if your original one does have lead-based paint, so you just add it to your envelope and then just remove that one document?
You can. Now, what you put into a listing agreement for a new construction versus a listing agreement for a house built in 1950 may be different. I don't know, maybe it won't be. So it depends on what the document is, if you want to do it that way, or what the packet of documents is going to be if you want to do it that way. A perfect example is Lori Gregory likes to do something. She has a verbiage that she puts in every single contract for pest, like about termites specifically. She puts it in every contract. So it doesn't matter if she's doing new construction, old build, 2005, middle ground. Like it doesn't matter what the house is. She puts this termite disclosure in it, that if termites are found, that they will be treated prior to the close date of the purchase. So it's in every single one. So for her, it wouldn't matter, but what she puts in a contract for a house built in 1950 versus 2015 for lead-based paint is going to be different. So it just depends on what it is that you like to put in your contracts when doing the templates. But yes, you can add the entire packet, and then when you're in the envelope and you've added the whole packet, just delete or remove one of those. Does anybody have any questions on the whole template duplicate process and how they show up when you're in the envelope once you've created it?
If you create a packet, does it show up as one attachment?
No.
So that's what I was asking, is like if you go to make your template and you put it in the envelope, it'll have like a listing agreement, lead-based paint.
No, so what they're asking is if you add multiple into the template, multiple documents in your template, and then you add it in your envelopes, will it show as like a single form? It shows as individual. So here I have a buyer packet. I only have 2 documents in it. That was not a very good buyer's packet, but I have 2 documents in it. One is my estimate to close, and one is my buyer broker service agreement, right? It's still showing that it's 2 separate documents. So when I go to a room, maybe, there it goes. And I have an envelope here, right? Now, I'm just gonna close this one out because I obviously was just using that as an example. So I'm gonna use template. It's my templates. It was my buyer packet right here, and I'm gonna add selected. I have multiple documents in the envelope, so multiple documents show up, or in the template, so multiple documents show up in my envelope. Now, say I didn't need this yet, I just wanted to do my buyer service, I could just remove that one and it will keep the part that I want. So if you did create a listing packet and you wanted to include lead-based paint stuff, you could just add the whole packet and then just delete the one disclosure for the lead-based paint that you're not going to need. So you could do it that way. It just, like I said, depends on what your verbiage is when you've created the template. With that also being said, just be very careful that when you're doing these, that you're doing pre-tagged roles. So I had created this, but I actually didn't create any boxes or signatures in here because it was just an example that I was working with. So I don't have any pre-tagged roles for this particular document, so it doesn't come up as an option for me. But when you create them, you will list out what the roles are, so you'll have a pre-tagged roles option. Any other questions? Okay. In that case, I'm going to stop sharing. And if you do end up with any questions or you have any concerns about how it functions, just let me know and we will work through them. Bye, Angie.